All right, on today's episode, I'm going to break down 3 easy ways to jump into real estate if you have little to no money. So grab a cigar, take a drink, sit with me, and let's go.
Hold up, why do they doubt the kid? I'm about to prove them all wrong again. I got a low tolerance, cause they don't even know what the problem is. It's me. You waiting on the boy to fail, then hold your breath and face your death. Cause you play a roulette with each step I progress, no less. Go ahead and place your bets, cause we know where we at, we know we top tier. Cause all the hate that you bring, we know it stops here. I'm taking off like a rocketeer, ain't stopping here. It's strange how they cannot see the future, but see profit here. Wait up.
All right, yes, I lit a cheap-ass cigar today because, look, I used to be poor and I used to be broke, so just because you get money doesn't mean that you like different things. Although I do like some fancier things in life, but today all I had was, some of my old school cigars. But if you don't like it, tough shit. All right, so I hear from so many of you that you don't know how to get started in real estate, or you have to have money to get started in real estate. And you struggle with this concept of starting a business with no money or just a little bit of money. And today, what my goal is to give you 3 basic ways to get into real estate. There are much more complicated issues in real estate. There's way more complicated ways to jump into real estate, but there's 3 ways that you can get into real estate. Now, when you don't have money or you just have a little bit of money, it is a much harder path. Like, I will give you that. Like, I'm not going to lie to you and say it's easy, but you got to work a little bit harder. And today, I'm going to give you those tools so that you understand, 1, exactly how I did it, how you can do it, and how you can get started without having a big bag of money in your back pocket. All right, so let's start with the simplest. And when I say simplest, I mean the one that really doesn't require a whole lot of money. Wholesaling. Wholesaling is by far one of the easiest ways to get into real estate if you have little money. If you have $500 to $1,000, you can absolutely get into wholesaling. And some people say, well, what's wholesaling, Todd? And for me, that's very, very simple to break down for you. Wholesaling is exactly what it says. Think about this. When you go into Costco or you go into one of these big box stores and you buy things in bulk or you buy a big item, you can typically get it for a cheaper price. And if you think about local sports teams, what do? They go to these big warehouses, right? Or Costco's or Sam's Club or whatever it is, and they buy a bunch of bulk candy, a bunch of bulk drinks. They then take it back to wherever the sports teams are at. They put it in the concession stand. They mark it up a little bit, and they then sell it to the public. That is exactly what wholesaling in real estate is all about. All right, now I'm going to give you a disclaimer. I don't know what state you're in, so you need to search your state laws about wholesaling. It's legal in almost every single state, but there are some rules in some states that apply to wholesaling. You need to understand that first, okay? That's number 1. So when we talk about wholesaling in real estate, here is the very basic way that you do it, okay? You have to find a cheap property, a property that you can buy at a discount, okay? And once you find that property at a discount, you put it under contract. Once you put it under contract, just as if you were buying it, you then take that contract and you have the ability to assign that contract to another buyer who will pay more for it. So if we just do simple math, let's say you put it under contract for $10,000 to the seller of that home or property. You then market that contract out to cash buyers and end buyers or investors that want to buy that property. But instead of saying it's $10,000, you could now say, hey, I got this contract for assignment, list all the details for the home, what it's going to take to rehab it, and what the after repair value is. The after repair value is what is that home worth after you've fixed it all up and you're able to refinance it or sell it on the open market. And you could say, I'm going to assign this contract for $20,000. Now, we'll get in the numbers here in a second. But if those numbers work and you find an investor that you can assign this contract to for $20,000, you only have it under contract for $10,000. So what do you do then? Nothing really special, okay? You do a assignment of contract to that end buyer, and then everything moves along the process as you had dictated and negotiated with the contract. At some point, it gets to the closing table with a title company, and that end buyer that you assigned the contract to is going to come in, and they're going to pay the $20,000 to buy that home. That money is going to go directly to the seller. Well, guess what? The seller was only expecting $10,000. So what do you get? you get what's in between. You get a $10,000 assignment fee. And that is the real basic way to wholesale real estate. Now, there's some things. It's not as easy as what I made it just sound. Number one, you got to find the deal. And finding the deal sometimes tends to be the harder part of the whole piece. But once you understand how to find the deal, then wholesaling becomes easy. And you can do it one of two ways. There's actually a multitude of ways, but I'm going to tell you the basic ways. Number one, you can go drive neighborhoods. Go drive parts where there's, houses that are boarded up. There's houses that are behind on taxes. And just find some properties that you think that maybe the owner would want to get rid of, right? Like tall grass, falling gutters, broken windows, things of that nature. All right, so how do we find properties? I just told you that you can drive neighborhoods. You can look for houses that have boards on them, cracked windows, tall grass, gutters that are fallen, properties that look like they're not taken care of. And you got to find the owner's information. How do you do that? Well, you could just knock on the door if somebody looks like they're living there and see if you can make contact with the owner of that property. Or you can skip trace them online. You can find some contact information from them. The internet is your friend. So however you can find that information from, you could send a letter to their house. You could mail a letter. There's systems out there where you can skip trace folks and find their contact information. But at the end of the day, you have to get to that owner. And you got to be able to talk to them about the property. Now, remember, real estate's a relationship game, right? So at the end of the day, you have to figure out a way to develop relationships with these people when you find these properties. Sellers of properties, they will sell properties to people that they know, like, or trust. So if they don't know you, they obviously can't like you, but in that phone call or in that conversation with them, they can get to know you, they can get to like you, and they can get to trust you, but that's on you to make them get to that point. And if you can convince them to sell property at what the property value is worth as is right there, to where you know that you still have numbers in there to be able to sell it off to an investor, it could be a good wholesale deal. Now, the problem with a lot of wholesalers, and what drives me nuts, and I don't have any problem buying a property off of a wholesaler, and if they make 20, 30, 40K off of a wholesale deal, I don't give a shit. It doesn't matter to me as long as the numbers work for what my goals are. The problem with wholesalers are sometimes they get greedy or sometimes they're uneducated. And I think a lot of investors, a lot of bigger investors, especially like myself, we get frustrated with wholesalers that just don't know their numbers. If a wholesaler says this property is going to take $30,000 in rehab, but it's really going to take $60,000 in rehab, that tells me they don't know what they're doing. So you have to be able to at least understand how much it's going to take to fix a property up, or at least get close, right? And at the beginning, that might be kind of hard. So that's going to take a little bit of researching. That's going to take you self-educating yourself to really understand how much it takes to rehab a property. Because at the end of the day, it's a very simple formula, okay? A lot of investors that are out there, and this is the formula that you have to keep in your mind. A lot of investors that are out there, they want to be all in on a property. By the time they've rehabbed it, by the time they're ready to refinance it or sell it, they want to be all into a property at 70 to 75% of the after repair value. So if that property is going to be worth $100,000 that investor can sell it off for when they're done fixing it up, or they can refinance from a bank, then their all-in number needs to be $75K. So if you're saying the property is going to take $20K in rehab, that means that they can only purchase that property for $55,000, okay? Now, those numbers are a little bit off because there's some holding cost in there and things like that. So if they can only buy a property for $55,000, that tells you that's the most that you're going to be able to sign that property for, that contract for. So when you're negotiating with the seller, then you need to get it under contract for less than 55. So you would, in this case, at most, try to get it under contract for 45,000. If you can get it lower, great. But if you get under contract for 45 and then you assign that contract to an end buyer at 55 and the numbers work for that end investor, well, now you can make a $10,000 assignment fee. And that's very simply. Now, how much money do you need to get into wholesaling? If you're going to bootstrap and you're going to go out and you're going to drive properties, you're going to find properties that are abandoned or they're, look like they haven't been taken care of, or they're just neglected, and you can get those sellers on the phone or you can make contact with them. If you can do that, $500 is all it takes, okay? Or even $100 in some situations. And that is only for your earnest money. Typically you want to put some earnest money down with the contract when you get the contract signed by the seller. So you're going to put $100 down, $500 down, $1,000 if that's what they need, whatever it's going to take to get that done. But you can do it with very little. You can do it with $100, and that's what you do. There's no other money that you need along the way during that deal. And then you got to sit back and you got to coordinate the transaction. And when it closes, you get the difference between what that's end buyer is going to pay and what that beginning seller agreed to. And that's how you make the assignment fee. You make that in between. Now, you can do this by bootstrapping, going out, driving neighborhoods, and you can do that. There's also all kinds of programs that are out there. I'm not going to name them all here, but you can find them to where you can go out and you can print list off based on criteria. You can look for all multifamily properties. You can look for all tax lien properties. You can look for all properties where they look like they have an owner that doesn't live there, that they live out of state. And at the end of the day, you can create these lists. You can go drive them. You can start sending postcards to them. You can start sending letters to them. You can skip trace them, start calling them. But it's going to take work up front. And if you don't have a lot of money to begin with, to buy lists, to pay for software, well, then you need to go out and just drive, put the time in. Find yourself. What I used to do all the time was I used to just get myself lost in the city. Now, I'm from the city, and it's very hard for me to get lost. But I would go out and I would try to find streets that I'd never been on, neighborhoods that I had never seen before. And I would go through and just look at all of the properties. I'd find properties that are behind on taxes that looked like they weren't taken care of. Older owners that were up in age that had a lot of equity in the house. That is how I would absolutely find these properties. It's called bootstrapping. And we don't have a lot of money. That's exactly what you have to do at the beginning. So you got to ask yourself, how much capital are you working with to get started wholesaling? And if you don't have a lot of capital, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to sacrifice to go out and find deals? Now, that was a very basic explanation of wholesaling, okay? But wholesaling is pretty simple. If you want to scale it, it's going to take a lot more work, and you're going to have systems and processes in place to be able to scale it at a high level. But if you want to just do it in your local area, then you absolutely can get out and you can bootstrap it. Now, how do you find your buyers? That's what you ask. Like, how do I find an end buyer? If I get it under contract at a good price, how do I do this, Todd? Well, you have Facebook groups. You have community networking groups that meet up once a month. You can go and search all of the online posts on, whatever the real estate investing network is on Facebook. Type in keywords like cash buyers. Just monitor those. You're going to find the investors in the area. You're going to find the ones that are cash buyers. Put out posts out there looking for cash buyers in this area and let them know that you have properties. Network with realtors, network with other investors, and you can find a good pool of buyers. But remember, at the end of the day, the numbers have to work. So if you can't get it under contract for a number that's going to work for an end buyer, you're really just spinning your wheels. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you find solid end buyers, because you don't want to have something under contract and then the end buyer not come back and close the deal. So what's very important, and you can get these online, you can go to an attorney, you need to have, one, purchase agreements to get it locked under a purchase agreement when you first start. Number two, you have to have an assignment of contract, usually a one-pager that you can send off to whoever your end buyer is going to be. And you can use these one-pagers to assign the contract out. That's pretty much all of the paperwork that you're going to need, okay? There's not a whole lot more that goes into that. When you put it under a purchase agreement, though, when you lock it up with the initial seller, you want to make sure that you give yourself as much time as you can squeeze out of that seller, right? So for your inspection contingency, try to get 60 days. Try to get at least 45 days. Because ultimately, whoever that end buyer is going to be that you're going to sign the contract to, they're going to want to try to get in and see the property and do their own inspection. So make sure you leave yourself rooms that are out. Good contracts when you're wholesaling allow you the opportunity to get out of those contracts for contingency reasons for the longest period of time that you possibly can. If you figure out that you're not going to be able to sign this thing out, or you have trouble getting it off and assigning it to an end buyer, you want to be able to walk away from this thing if you don't have the ability to buy it. Now, here's what I would tell you. I never wholesale a property if I can't actually buy that property myself. I'm not going to do that to sellers. And if you do that, word to get around, you'll ruin your reputation. And I'm telling you that real estate is a relationship game, and you want to make sure that people respect what you've done. They want to know that you've treated them right. And if you're just walking away from deals all the time, people are going to know that, and you're not going to get a great name in this game. So if you're not willing to buy the property, don't wholesale. Now, the big wholesalers out there and all these online gurus will tell you that's the wrong way. What I'm telling you is I care more about relationships than what some of these guys might do. If you want to do it on a big scale, there's probably going to be quite a few properties that you're going to have to walk away from. But at the end of the day, that is the basics of wholesaling 101. All right, you know what? I'm going to be honest with you guys. This cigar is driving me nuts on the left side of my body. One, I don't smoke with my left hand when I smoke cigars. Number two, Miles put it here thinking it was going to be a great idea. I don't think so. I'm going to move this to where it's a little more comfortable for me. I enjoy my cigars as much as the next guy, but it has to be comfortable. Reaching for it. So we're done with wholesaling. We're going to jump into number two, the basics. And this is really how I got my start. All right, flipping. Flipping is the second easiest way to get into real estate. Now, there's a little bit more that goes into flipping, and you actually have to buy the properties. So what is flipping? Flipping is when you buy something that needs fixed up, you fix it up, and then you sell it for a higher price. That's it. That's all there is to it, okay? Now, finding the deals. Finding the deals is the exact same way that you would find deals when you wholesale. You can also find flips on MLS. But what you have to do is you have to know your numbers. And when you're doing this, the same thing as wholesaling, you have to know what that ARV is. You get your ARV by running comps. You can use Zillow, Redfin, if you have a realtor friend, or if you're a realtor, you can run comps. But you have to know what properties in that area in the same condition and similar styles, similar size are going to sell for. Very important. If you're off by 10, 15 grand on a flip and you only have 15, 20 grand in your margins, shit could go wrong very quickly and you could lose money or be stuck with a house. So you got to make sure that you know your numbers. That's it. So once you've went out to a neighborhood and we found a discounted property, we need to understand how to take it down. And that's what a lot of you are sitting there and you're thinking, like, how do I take this property down? Todd, I ain't got a whole lot of money, or I got zero money. Well, there's ways to buy property without any of your own money. But let's talk about finding the property first. When you're flipping, it's a lot more important to make sure that you're buying the ugliest house in the nicest neighborhood, okay? You want to buy houses that are in good school districts. You want to find houses that are on nice streets. You don't want to buy war zone houses and think that it's going to be a good flip. You have to be able to sell the thing at the end of a flip. So the way that you do it is pick those neighborhoods out. But again, find the streets that, you know, maybe have been neglected, that have some houses on them with cracked windows. The homeowners aren't taking care of their properties. Find the ugliest house on the best street, and that's your number one rule and guide when you're trying to find a good flip property. If you have a good realtor in your back pocket, somebody that you're friends with, somebody that you've developed a relationship with, well, have them understand what your buy box is, what you're looking for, and they can bring you deals. Go to local meetups. Local meetups, people are always trying to sell deals. Tell the wholesalers what you're looking for. Tell them specifically what you are looking for so that they can bring you a deal that fits inside of your buy box. It's that simple. Like, deals get pushed to me every single day, but it's because I've developed those relationships over time. And you can do the exact same thing. It's not that hard. At the end of the day, you want to have as much deal flow as you possibly can. You want to be getting stuff from the MLS, from the realtors, from the wholesalers, from any of the networks that you have out there, wherever that's at. You have to develop relationships, which means you can't be afraid to talk about what you're looking for. You can't be afraid to tell people on social media what you're doing. I get so many deals sent to me from social media, it's ridiculous. People that I've never met in person, but they've heard me talk about what I'm looking for in real estate, and they send me deals. So how do we do flips with zero or just a little bit of money? It's real simple, okay? Again, if you have $500 to $1,000, that's enough money that you can put earnest money down on a property. So the best way is to bootstrap, go out and find properties that are in your local area that you can get under contract for cheap. Now, the same formula applies. You want to be 75% or less all in on this deal. Now, the lower that you can go is the easier way to go. That way you have bigger margins, okay? But in a lot of cities, you're going to be at that 70 to 75% cap. So you want to know what you can sell it for, and then times that by 75%. And from there, you want to subtract out what your rehab and your soft costs are going to be. So again, on a $100,000 property, you know you're already starting off that the most you can pay is $75,000. Well, then, if it's going to take you $20,000 to rehab that property to get it ready for the market, well, now you got to take $20,000 off that. $65,000, $55,000. But you're going to have soft costs. You're going to have some utility costs, some electric bills. Depending on how you pay for the property, you might have some interest along the way. And you're going to have a little bit of other holding costs. So take off another, let's say $5,000 if you're going to flip it in 3 to 4 months, okay? So now we're down to $50,000. So anything below that is going to be extra gravy. But what you're going to do is you're going to try to get that property under contract for as cheap as you possibly can, but it has to be underneath that formula. And as long as you do that formula right, and you got your ARV right, times it by 75, subtracted your contracting repairs out, and you took off your soft holding cost along the way, you're going to make money on that. And I have a really simple flip calculator that I can send you guys if you DM the word below calculator. So Put calculator in the comments and I will send you my personal flip calculator that tells you right then if it's a good deal or not. It already has the formulas built out for you. You don't have to do anything crazy. There's no trick, no gimmick. I'm not selling you on it. If you want it, put the word calculator in the notes below and I will get that to you. So flipping, that's it. That's all you got to do. Now, the hard part is finding good contractor. That is one of the hardest things to do. But if you're local, it's a little bit easier. And I'm going to tell you how to find some contractors. Go to Home Depot. Go to Lowe's. Go to your local gas station. Anytime you see a van or a truck pull in that has ladder racks on it, stop and talk to those people. Find out what they're doing. What kind of work do they do? Are they drywallers? Are they painters? Are they flooring guys? Like, what kind of work are they doing? You can spot a contractor from a mile away, but you got to be willing to talk to people. At the end of the day, that is all this game is about. It's about making relationships. It's about making connections. And if you do that consistently and you're thinking about what your end goals are and you're always taking time out of your day to talk to people and develop relationships and to get contact information, you'll be surprised by how many people in your life that you come across just by going in the local store, just by eating at your local restaurant, just by going to McDonald's or a gas station. You'll make so many connections, it's unreal. But you have to be ready to put yourself out there. You got to be able to talk to people. That's it. It's simple. So you need to find the contractors. What's other ways? You can get on Facebook groups and ask for referrals. If there's a real estate investing network that has a Facebook group or they have local meetups, go to those. There's always going to be some contractors that go to those as well. But if not, there's going to be other investors there and they can give you some referrals and then use those referrals and make those contacts. Now, you know what your budget has to be on these properties. And listen, trust me, when you first get into this, you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to under budget for a project. You're going to over budget for a project. But if I'm giving you any advice whatsoever, it would be this. Never try to cut your numbers down to make the deal work. All right, hear me again. Hear me again. Take a drink while you're listening. Never cut your budget or try to make the numbers work for the deal. They either work or they don't work. This is not emotional. And if you take your emotions out of the game, then you will have so much more success. But if you get emotionally attached to a property or emotionally attached to a deal, you are going to lose money or you're going to make a big mistake and you're going to regret it. So never become emotionally attached at all. Be willing to walk away from the freaking deal. Just do it. It's easy. Yes, no. It either works or it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, walk away. Don't try to make it work for you. Don't try to make it work for the deal. The numbers are the numbers. And always make sure you inflate your numbers a little bit, because if your numbers work when you're being very, very conservative and you're jacking them up a little bit, then you're always going to do okay on that deal, okay? So when we're flipping, we got to find the properties. We got to put them under contract. We have to make sure that we understand the ARV. We have to make sure we understand the rehab cost and our soft cost, and we're going to be able to sell it to. Now you say, Todd, I just told you, I don't have a lot of money. So how do I buy this property? You're going to love this. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you how you do it. There's a couple ways. First way, is there people in your life that do have money? That's easiest. All right. And if it is, then what you can do is you can make relationships with hard money lenders. If that person doesn't have enough money to fund the whole deal, you can find hard money lenders. Just go to the internet, search hard money lenders in whatever city you're in, and go through and start calling hard money lenders and finding out what the criteria is for them to lend on a flip. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of hard money lenders out there. I've used a lot of them. I have great local hard money lenders. Find a hard money lender that will fund a deal for you. The great thing about hard money lending is this. Yes, they're going to check your credit score. Yes, they're going to see if you have experience or not. The more experience you have, the better deal you're going to be able to get. You got to have a decent credit score, but it doesn't have to be killer, okay? You don't have to have a killer credit score. They're going to lend and fund the deal based on the deal. Do the numbers work? So you got to know your numbers. And when you use a hard money lender, they're going to fund, usually when you're starting off, 75% of your purchase price. So if the purchase price is $100,000, they're going to fund $75,000 of it. But they will also fund 100% of your construction cost. So what they're going to do is they're going to close the deal for you. They're going to give you 75% of the purchase price, and then you're going to give them a scope of work saying how much rehab money you need. They're going to put that into an escrow account. And then as you do work to the property, you're going to turn in receipts, you're going to turn in invoices, they're going to do inspections, and they're going to give you that money back so that they are funding the deal along the way for you. So the only thing you're left coming up with is that 25% down payment at the beginning. Now, as you get more experience, you can find hard money lenders that give you 80, 90, even 100% of deals. So that 25%, where do you get it from? Well, that could be people in your circle. That could be a friend, a family member, somebody that you've met that is willing to fund that 25%. And in return, when you guys sell that flip, you give them a percentage of the profits back, whatever you guys work out. Now, starting off, you're usually going to be around 50%. So you're like, hey, Timmy, I need to fund this deal. I need $25,000 to make this thing work. I'll do all the work. You sit back. Just give me the $25K. We'll close this deal. We're going to fix it up. We're going to flip it. And then when you flip it, if you make $50K after you've paid everything back, including the hard money lender, you each get a check for $25K. Now, what have you just done? You're like, well, I don't want to give up 50%. Well, I hear that from some people. Who gives a shit if you gave up 90%? Because the 10% that you made or the 50% that you made is on zero money. So I would much rather have 50% of something than 0% of something, right? And if you don't have the money, you got to make the sacrifices to get people into the deals with you. And I'm telling you, you might think that you don't have people in your life that have money. You just need to figure out the people that do have a little bit. Even if they have $10,000 stashed off, that means now you got to go find a property that's going to cost you $10,000 to close. So with everything that we do, adjust what you're looking for. Know how much money that you got. Know that you have a hard money lender. Know how much you can get for gap money from somebody and adjust the deals that you're looking for. If you can only get, let's say, 20, 30K from somebody to borrow, well, then you know that you can't go find a $300,000 property, right? Like, just doesn't make sense. You have to understand your numbers. But it's, again, networking and it's relationships. And if you make those relationships with people, I promise you, there's people in your life that have retirement accounts. There's people in your life that have been stacking away a little bit of money. And there's people in your life that love the idea of real estate. They just don't have time to do the work, and they don't have any idea how to do it. But there's nothing better than partnering with a buddy or a friend who's always wanted to jump into real estate, and they've been wanting to make their money work for them. And you do all the work, and all they got to do is come up with the gap money. And at the end of this thing, you get to write them a big, fat check. There's two things that happen. One, you feel good about it, and your friend feels good about it. But number two, now they're hooked and they want to keep investing money with you. And each time they're going to get a little bit more. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all wrong with that. But you have to make sure that you start small and then build the relationships as you go. And that's the easiest way to fund these deals. Now, if you got your own money, great, go ahead and fund it. If you got down payment money, good, go ahead and fund it. But most of us, even still today, we use hard money loans. There's lots of other creative ways to buy real estate, okay? Whole life policies are a great one. If you've been investing in a whole life policy and it has a cash value, you can borrow from that. If you have a stock portfolio and you have X amount of dollars in stock accounts, well, typically, if you got it set up right, you can borrow money off of that without affecting your principal. So let's say you have $100,000 in a stock portfolio account. Well, you could probably borrow up to 65, 70% of that money. And your brokerage, whoever you're with, your financial advisor, they're going to cut you a check for that. Whatever that is, 65, 75%, and you're going to borrow it at whatever the current interest rates are. Now, the cool thing about that is that your principal doesn't change. It doesn't go anywhere. So if you borrow from your stock account, your principal keeps growing like it's at 100K, even though you just borrowed 65K off of it. And then once you flip the house and you sell it and you get the profits back, now you just go back and you pay back that loan that you gave to yourself. If it's a whole life policy, you don't even have to pay that back. If you have cash value to your whole life policy, you borrow it. And if you want to pay it back, pay it back. And if you don't, then you don't. If you don't pay it back, there's two things that happen. One, you have less money that you can borrow. And two, if something was to happen to you, whatever you have outstanding would come off of your death benefit. But when you're able to do things like that, that's called infinite banking. But for most of you out there, you're not going to have money sitting around. You're not going to have 100K sitting around. You're probably not going to have a lot of family members or whatever. So you have to work harder to develop relationships. Don't be afraid to get online. Get on investor forums. Get on different internet sites. Get on different groups and networks that are out there. Go to meetups and find people. You can find capital partners. You can find partners that have great credit scores. If you need a great credit score to come in and partner, maybe say, hey, let me use your credit score and I'll give you 10% of the profit that's at the end of this deal. So if you find somebody like that and they're willing to personally guarantee that hard money loan or whatever the loan is, you can develop those types of relationships. There's always a way to get it done, but you have to be willing to be creative and put yourself out there into networks and networking groups. If you're not willing to do the work, nothing's ever going to happen for you that we're talking about today. Now you say, Todd, that sounds really easy. It is. It's very, very easy. And I'm telling you it's easy. I'm not now, but listen, I grew up in the projects. I grew up in the trailer courts. I grew up with no money. I grew up with family that didn't teach me financial literacy. I didn't have any education other than a police degree. Okay. I knew nothing about money. I knew nothing about real estate. So when I sit here and tell you it's easy, I'm telling you it's easy because I've done it myself. I've done exactly these things myself. I bootstrapped. I sacrificed. I ate ramen noodles. I didn't go out to fancy dinners. I didn't buy new cars for a while. I struggled, man. Like my first house was getting foreclosed on. My first car was repossessed. And that was when I decided to get into real estate. So everything that I tell you to do, this is not like fantasy. This isn't dream stuff. This isn't something that I read in a book or did whatever. This is shit that I learned on my own at the beginning. Now I've learned a lot more along the way. And what I'll tell you is as you make money, things get a lot easier for you. Everything in life gets easier for you when you make money. They say, does money buy happiness? And I'll tell you, no, it doesn't, but it sure the hell buys everything else. And money makes everything easier. Relationships, you don't have to fight over money, being able to travel, being able to do stuff for your kids. Your kid comes home and they have a trip that's planned and it's going to be an extra $500 or $1,000 or something for a sports program that you didn't plan on. Well, things like that become much easier and it takes the stresses from life when you have money. So if you want it, instead of sitting there giving yourself so many reasons why you can't do it because you ain't got money or you ain't got the skills, just shut up. Shut up and self-educate yourself and develop the grind inside yourself that says, no matter what, I'm going to trek down this path and I'm going to do it. That's it. It's that simple. And there's so much free information out there on the internet. There's so many free blogs and books and courses and all kinds of stuff out there that you can learn. There's no reason why you can't self-educate yourself. But it takes a different type of person. It takes somebody willing to sacrifice. It's going to take you being willing to work long days and long nights and work a W-2 job and then focus on real estate. It's going to take you being vulnerable. You have to be vulnerable, and you got to put yourselves in rooms that at first you don't belong, or rooms that are tough to get into, rooms of people that have money, because relationships are so key. And most of this is going to revolve around relationships, finding deals, finding money, finding hard money lenders. But at the end of the day, those are the ways that you're going to be able to fund your flips. Find people you connect with, and that is it. So Flipping 101 is simple. Find a property, know what your after repair value is, know how much your construction is going to take, make sure that your formula is underneath that, and then sell the property for a profit, and that money is yours. Now, if you're not a realtor, you need to have a good connection with a realtor and find somebody that you really trust, that also cares about seeing your success, right? And not all realtors are created the same. Not all realtors are investment realtors. Not all realtors understand. If you went to them and you said, hey, I listened to this guy, Todd, and he told me this is the formula for a flip, this is a formula for a wholesale. Can you help me about this? 90% of realtors aren't going to be able to give you those formulas. Why? Because they're not investors themselves. They're not people that invest in properties. You know, realtors a lot of times are realtors. You got to find that small percentage of realtors that really understand investments. They understand the numbers, because when they do that, they're only going to bring you numbers that they know and deals that they know are going to be within your buy box. If you find a realtor that doesn't understand investments, they can try to push bad deals on you all the time because all they're cared about is a commission. So you have to have a good team around you that you trust. All right. And if you do, then you can be very successful at flipping properties. And I say, okay, Todd, I just flipped this property. I made 20 grand. What do I do with the money? Well, you can do a couple things, and I'm going to tell you what you can do. Number one, you can take that 20 grand. Now you can invest in your own flip without bringing in somebody else to fund your gap money, and you can make 100% of the profits. That's number one. Number two, continue funding deals with hard money and using people for your gap money, and stick that 20 grand into some other type of investment. And what do I mean by that? Buy a long-term asset, buy a 4-unit apartment building, buy a single-family home that you're going to be able to keep as a long-term investment for rentals. Because when we talk about flipping and we talk about wholesaling, those are pipelines. And what I mean by that is you always have to pump into a pipeline to get it to give back out to you. So you're always going to have to find your next flip. You're always going to have to find your next wholesale if that's all that you're doing. But for me, I talk a lot about generational wealth, and I want you guys to understand the difference. Generational wealth is in the long-term play. Okay. And that's why on my list today, rentals and keeping rentals long term, that's number 3, because you don't get rich off of rentals right at the beginning. Right? You create generational wealth. You increase your net worth by having long-term rentals. You're playing on the fact that depreciation is going to go up, rents are going to go up, but you're going to have to hold those properties long-term. All right. And you don't just get like crazy, crazy cash flow off rents right off the bat. So when I first started, I was flipping, I was wholesaling, but I was taking everything that I made and I was putting it right back into investments. I was buying 4-unit apartment buildings. I was buying duplexes. I was buying other assets that I could keep long-term, because over time, those all start accumulating. And now you are creating that generational wealth and your net worth is going up. And that's where you put yourself into a different position in life. All right. And when you get to a point where you're like, you know what, I'm done flipping, I'm done wholesaling. If you just cut them off, you've cut that pipeline off, no more money coming in. But along the way, if you've made smart investments and you've reinvested back into real estate with long-term hold properties, or you've taken the money and you've bought other businesses outside of real estate, well, now you're creating the generational wealth, because the goal is to be able to make passive income. When you're flipping, when you're wholesaling, that's not passive income. Even when you first start off and you're investing in real estate, like long-term holds, that usually is not passive income unless you're doing some type of syndication or you're investing in a deal with somebody else that you don't have to do anything with. The truth is, you're always going to be an active investor most of the time. Even if you're out of state, you still got to manage your property management group back in town. You got to manage the contractors that are doing construction and rehab for you. But when you make profits off flipping, when you make profits off wholesaling, make sure you reinvest that money. Do not go out and change your personal living environment. Don't go buy a new car. Don't go buy a new truck. Don't go buy a new house. Don't go on crazy lavish vacations. Put that money away. Buy other assets. That's the name of the game, is buying assets. The more assets you get, the more generational wealth that you create. And that's what you're looking for. That's what you strive for. My first 5 to 8 years in real estate, I was not rich. I was still struggling because I was still fixing up properties. I was still trying to get them to a good place. And you don't make a shit ton of money off of the rentals right off the bat, because you're always going to have maintenance expenses. You're always going to have CapEx expenses. There's always going to be stuff that just eat away at your cash flow. And those are going to be things that are always pulling and tugging at you that just dry up your money. So if you're reinvesting, though, eventually you'll pay mortgages down, rents will go up, appreciation will go up, and you'll have these properties sitting there that have really good values. And at some point, it just kind of clicks. And now you're sitting there with 100 units or 150 or 300 units or 1,000 units, whatever you've created. And that's where the real money comes in at. So let's recap. You make money off flipping, you wholesale, and don't go blow it. Don't go to the strip club and throw stacks in the air. Don't go buy a new house. Don't buy a new car. Don't increase your lifestyle because you're like, oh, okay, I can make an extra 10 grand a month, which means I can have 10,000 more in bills. That's what the middle class does. That's what the poor does. The reason people stay poor, the reason people stay in the middle class is because they don't understand the evolution of money. And you have to understand the evolution of money to be able to get wealthy and become part of that 1%. And the real simple way to think about money is this. Your goal is to make you money while you are sleeping. And you can't do that if you're increasing your lifestyle, okay? Once you get to a certain place where you start stabling off, then you can start chipping away and saying, okay, I can afford a liability for X because I have this asset that pays for it. And that's what the trick of this whole game is, right? Like if you want to buy a new car, don't go buy a new car because you got to raise your W-2. Go buy a new car because you bought an asset that now has rents coming in that not only pay for that new car, but also make that property for free. That's the evolution of money. And that's how we think. That's how the 1% thinks. The middle class thinks, I make a little bit more money. Now I go spend it on liabilities. And they keep holding themselves down. Maintain a consistent lifestyle no matter how much money you get from flipping, wholesaling, or your rentals. And if you do that over time, man, things are going to really turn around for you. Now you ask yourself, okay, Todd, you said go buy rentals and long-term rentals. And if I made 20 grand off flip, how do I do that? Well, you do it the exact same way. You go and you bootstrap, you drive for dollars, and you find properties that you can buy at discounted rates. You can use hard money lenders for 4-unit buildings. You can use hard money lenders for 10-unit buildings. You can use them for duplexes, or you can use them for single-family homes, the same exact way that you would fund a flip. Now, if you don't have enough cash to pay for that rental, that, like, let's say you find a discounted 4-unit building and you don't have enough cash to pay for that down payment after you got a hard money lender involved, Well, go find a friend, go find somebody you met, go find somebody within your network that does want to fund some deals. And you buy it the exact same way that you would buy a flip. And then you got to be able to force appreciation, which means you need to come in and be able to raise rents. You need to be able to fix the property up. And then you need to be able to cash out refinance. Okay. So after you've bought this property at a discount and you've fixed it up, you've turned some units, maybe put some new windows in, you've painted, you've done the things that you need to do to make it a nice building. You've increased the rents to get the rents higher. Now you go back to a traditional bank and you say, hey, I want to do a cash out refinance. And what that bank is going to do is that bank is then going to send an appraiser out. They're going to reappraise your property and they're going to come up with the as is value at that moment. So if you've raised rents, if you've made it nicer, you're hoping that that property is going to come in at a much higher appreciation. So let's say you bought a property for 100 grand and you stuck 50 grand into it. Now, by the way, that 50 grand is funded the same way on a hard money deal. Hard money lender will put that in construction escrow and be able to fund your rehab along the way. After you've done that, and that bank sends a new appraiser out, they're going to say, okay, you bought it for 100 grand, you stuck 50 grand into it. They don't even need to know the number that you stuck into it. They'll say, this property is now worth 200,000. So what's that bank going to allow you to do? Again, 75% is typically the rule. They'll say you can now borrow 75% of the new appraised value. So if they say that that property is now worth $200,000, you have a hard money loan out for 100,000 plus 50,000. You're all in for 150,000. That bank is going to pay off your hard money loan. You're now in a new loan for $150,000, but you're going to be at terms that are reasonable for a traditional bank. Right now, they're still a little bit high. But at the end of the day, you'll be in a traditional loan, a 25 or 30-year mortgage, and you're going to be able to have that mortgage payment, and now your hard money's out. But here's the beautiful thing. Catch what I just said. You paid $100,000, and I'm not going to go into like the down payment that you stuck in that because really you only have $75,000 a deal. But however you got the $100,000 from the hard money lender and then the $50,000 to the construction loan, you're all in for $150,000. If that bank then comes and appraises at 200 grand and you can borrow 75% of that, you've just paid off all the money that you had in that deal. You got your cash back from the 25% down payment. You got the hard money loan paid off, the construction loan paid off, and now you're in that deal with zero money. So even if you're cutting like straight flush or making a little bit of cash flow each month from the rents, that's okay because you have zero money in the deal. So your return at this point is now infinite. Yes, you can still lose money, but if you've done it right, your rents are going to continue to rise and your appreciation is going to continue to rise. So over the years that you hold it, that's when you really start making more cash. That's when you start making more money on the deals. And the longer you hold these properties, the more money you're going to make if you do it right and you look after your properties. Does that make sense? Like, I hope you guys are hearing me. Like, I'm telling you how to buy real estate with no money or very little money, and then how to have no money left in deals. That's how I've done absolutely everything. Now, there's other clever ways that you can fund real estate, okay? When you find older owners or you find owners that just need to get out of a property and you found them at a good discount, we can owner finance these things. We can go to an owner and we can say, hey, you want 100 grand from your property? Great. Instead of me going to a bank, why don't you finance that deal for me? And they can actually write you a prom note and a mortgage payment, and you can pay them just like you would a bank. Now, typically this only works when it's an owner that has high equity or an owner that has it completely paid off, okay? And there's two ways to do this. You can either do it through a prom and mortgage, which is typically like you would understand with a bank, or you could do it through a land contract. A lot of states have land contracts. Now, the real simple way to break down land contracts between a straight owner finance deal with a prom note and a mortgage is very simple. Land contracts are better for the sellers, and owner finance deals with a prom and mortgage payment are better for the buyers. And it's all about protections. Land contracts, there's some things that go into it. If you get into a land contract as a buyer or a seller, in this area at least, if you're not more than 5 years on the land contract deal and you don't have more than 20% equity in the deal, then the seller of that can just forfeit the property, come take it back, change locks, and you were done. If you have an owner finance deal with a promissory note and it's done just like a traditional bank, that seller would then have to go through a foreclosure process just like a normal bank. So if you think about that, that's why land contracts are better for sellers and owner finances with a mortgage and prom are better for buyers. But in all cases, make sure that you consult an attorney that you trust or a real estate attorney that can give you some guidance on these things. Don't take my word for it. I am not an attorney, but I'm here telling you how I've done this. My initial portfolio, when I was flipping and I was wholesaling, I would take all that money and I would use that money as leverage to find older owners that had high equity in their properties or had the properties paid off. And I would convince them through creating a relationship. Convince them to owner finance me. Let me go into a land contract. Let me go into a some type of owner finance deal. Okay. There's all kinds of ways to do this, but I didn't have a lot of money. So that's what I had to do, was be creative. Now, I'll tell you, the deals were fewer and far between. I had to drive a lot of streets. I had to put a lot of hours in. I had to call a lot of people that said, fuck no. But you know what? Out of thousands of calls, a couple people are going to say yes. And I got a question for you. If you had to sit down today and make 1,000 phone calls just to get one yes, where you can make $10, $20, $30, $40,000, would it be worth it? Would it be worth it? And when I was poor, when I was middle class, the answer to that was an astounding yes. I would have made 3, 4, 5,000 calls to make $10,000, to make $5,000, to make $20,000. And as you get bigger in the game, your thresholds become a little bit bigger, and they become a little bit larger. You know, if you said, Todd, you got to go make 1,000 calls, and you might make $10,000 off of it, I would say, nah, I got a team to do that. I'm not going to do that now. But when I was first starting out, if I can make $5,000 or $10,000, man, that changed my life at that moment. And as we sit here and we talk about these ways to do real estate with little to no money, I'm telling you that all of the things that I've told you I have done, and it's exactly how I built my portfolio. Now I'm in a different place in my life, and I buy businesses, I've started other companies, and I do a lot bigger things in real estate. But everything in this show, in this episode, is exactly what I did to build my portfolio. And even worse, I didn't know about hard money lenders back then. I didn't know about how to go find all these private lenders. So I had to be really creative with owner finance deals. But it's because of that. It's because of the way that I've built my portfolio that I've had so much success, and why I'm kind of like a trick of all trades, right? With real estate, I know how to do everything because I had to be so creative starting out. Now, most of you listening to this, you're in a much better place than me because the amount of information online is like crazy. You can self-educate. You listen to guys like me or other influencers. You can jump on sites. You can go to networking programs. Like, we didn't have all that, 13, years ago, 14 years ago when I started in real estate. But if you want to change your life, if you want to change your financial trajectory, if you want to put yourself in a different spot, if you don't want to be middle class, if you don't want to be poor, if you want to be able to provide for your family, and you want to be able to live a different type of lifestyle than you've always lived, you got to be willing to work, and you have to be willing to sacrifice. This shit ain't easy. And there's a reason why not everybody does it. Making money in real estate is easy, but it's like the hot dog. Lots of people like hot dogs, but they don't want to know what's inside the hot dog. And that's a lot like real estate. I hear people all the time say, man, Todd, you're so lucky. No, I am not fucking lucky. I grinded my ass off. I put the work in. I sacrificed. My family sacrificed not having me around. I've been down to where I've had a couple bucks left in my bank account, even when I was doing real estate. I've had to borrow money left and right from different people just to pay for real estate in the past. There were times where I had deals where I didn't know how I was going to, get to the next deal. I didn't know how I was going to pay my mortgage payment. I didn't know how I was going to pay for a hot water heater that went out. There were times where I was in my bed at night and I couldn't sleep because I was so stressed. There's times where I cried over real estate. I'll get vulnerable with you. I don't give a shit. Like, some of the most stressful times in my life was when I was first starting out in real estate and based around money. But I did one thing. No matter how hard things got, no matter how many haters were in my life, no matter how grim the situation seemed, no matter how much money it seemed like I didn't have, I never, ever strayed from what my passion and belief was. My passion was to create a life for my family and myself that I only ever imagined, that I dreamed for. That was my passion. I never wanted to be poor again. I never wanted to be broke again. I never wanted to lose my house or not be able to make bills on time. I was running from poverty. I was running from middle class. That was my absolute passion at that point. Now, what was my belief? My belief is that if I stayed true to real estate, doing the things that I had learned how to do through self-education, if I stayed true to all of that, no matter how bad shit got, or how much money I lost or didn't have or whatever, my belief is that things would work out eventually. And they did. And they did. 13 years later, 14 years later, I mean, time flies, but I live a lifestyle. I mean, I have a mansion. I have nice cars. My family goes on vacations anywhere we want to go. I can do anything in this world that I want to do. Anything. The things that I love most about being able to do whatever I want is that I'm able to give to charities. I'm able to give to sports teams. I'm able to help people that are in more vulnerable positions than I am. And I've never lost sight of who I was or where I came from or what I believe in my heart. And money has allowed me to do all of that. You know, money has allowed me to make a difference in other people's lives. Money's allowed me to employ hundreds and hundreds of people out there that might not have a job if it wasn't for one of my companies. But because I had the passion, because I had those beliefs early on, and I stayed through and I pushed through the walls and I pushed through the ceilings when it seemed like there was, no winning in sight, that's why we're here today. And you can do it, but you got to have that grind and you got to have that passion and you got to be willing to just say, I'm going to do this shit. There's nobody out there that can't do it, but you got to be willing to push through it. Now, it doesn't have to be real estate. It can be entrepreneurship. It could be some other business. It could be anything. I'm just telling you that I think real estate is one of the easiest vehicles to create financial freedom and to create generational wealth. I love businesses. I love buying businesses that are not real estate. I love running our businesses that are not real estate. But for a guy like me that had no education hardly when I started this thing, real estate was the simplest for me to start off with. And that's why I chose it. Sell a house for $100, you only paid $50. Well, you made somewhere in between. And that was the easy math that I did in my head. So I'm telling you today, if you've taken nothing from this, take this. If you want to change your life, you got to change it yourself. Nobody's going to do it for you. You got to be so determined, so entrenched with the thought of changing your life and changing the path that you've went. You got to be willing to do whatever it takes. You got to be willing to wake up early, go to bed late, lose sleep. You got to be willing to make connections and networks and relationships and do all the shit that we've talked about today. And if you do that, I promise you things can change. You can change the financial trajectory for yourself, for your life, for your family, for anybody. And you can do what you've always wanted to do. It's possible. And I'll leave you with this. We've talked today. We talked about wholesaling, we talked about flipping, and we've talked about buying long-term rentals with hardly any money. And I've told you the ways that you can do that. If you're scared, that's natural. If you feel like you don't have the education, that's natural. If you have negative people in your life that tell you that not to do it because you won't have success or you'll lose money in real estate or you'll lose money in business, that's natural. But what you have to do is you have to create a mindset, a bulletproof mindset, where you have your goals, you have your passion, you have your beliefs, and you have yourself 1,000% locked in to what you want to accomplish. And when you have that bulletproof mindset, nobody outside can puncture that. Nobody can put a dent in that mindset. Nobody can stand between you and your goals. But if you're not willing to shift the way you think, if you're not willing to shift, the way that you approach life or the way that you approach friendships, then nothing's going to change for you. You got to be the one to make the changes. That's it. And I did. I've had to cut family members out. I've had to cut friends out. But you can't have negativity in your life. You need to have real ride or dies with you. You need to have people that support you, people that cheer for you, people that want to see your success. And the truth is, most people in this world are not those people. So figure that out. Figure out how you're going to make the shift. And when you're ready, just do it. There is no good time to jump in. You just got to do it. All right, so today, you've got the 3 basics that I used for real estate, and I still use all 3 of those today. But that's how I started in real estate. That's how you can start in real estate. I hope you guys got something from this. So until next time, we'll see you.
Hold up. Why do they doubt the kid? I'm about to prove them all wrong.